Alright, today I thought I'd make a video showing you guys how to remove and install a new differential assembly into a Mark III Toyota Supra. Basically the steps you're going to be taking is have the car up in the air, remove the exhaust, unbolt the axles from the differential, unbolt the drive shaft from the differential, and then swap everything else over after that. For this case, in this case, I already have the exhaust removed and the carb in the air, so we'll start here. Alright, so now that we're under the car, we can see that there are 6 nuts on each side of the differential, which connects the diff to the drive shaft. You're going to want to remove that first. These are 14s. One helpful tip here, if you are having issues with the wheels spinning when you're doing this, it helps to have the car locked in gear or pull the handbrake when you do this. I guess in my case, these look like they're all kind of loose. I had this differential out pretty recently, and I did torque it to spec, so I guess this time I'm gonna try and put a dab of Loctite on it when I reassemble everything. Alright, I think that's the last one. No! Alright. And that's one side. Alright, so that's both sides done. Alright, so the next step now is to remove the 4 driveshaft bolts from the differential. These are still 14s, but I think I'm going to try using a set of wrenches just to prevent these from spinning while I'm doing it. You could also put the car in gear as well, that'll help.
recommend feed it as you are or stereo. Not that manual, anything. Try it. There it is. Now that should give us plenty of room to pull all this out now. Alright, so now we're coming around to the back of the car, and there we're gonna remove two nuts and two bolts. Two bolts being here, and two nuts over here at the top. I don't think you're gonna be able to see them, but they're there. Those are gonna be 17s. And we could take these off because the stock diff is studded at the top, so even if you remove these, it'll still be held in place. Cool. Alright, so now there's only two more bolts to go. It's gonna be this one and this one. I believe the factory size are 19s, but for me they're 22s just because I replaced them, but same story here. Before you do that though, I would suggest you now get a floor jack and a block of wood and support the differential right here, as if you remove this it'll start to sag. So now that you have your floor jack here, you're gonna want to put center the weight somewhere around here, just because that's where the bulk of the weight on the differential is. If you put your block on the cover, then as you take the last two bolts out, it'll just tip over. So get that in position. And just start to put pressure on it. Like that. And get the two remaining bolts out. Where's my ratchet? Alright, so now what I'm going to try and do is slide the assembly to the front to get it off the stud, and then see if I could lower it without
dropping it. Alright, so it's off the studs now. And there it is. One diff out of a MK3 Supra. Alright, so now that this has been pulled from the car, here's the two diffs side by side. On the left is what just came out of the car, and on the right is what's gonna be going in it. They're both 4.3s. Based on the option package in the car, the old one should have been on LSD, and maybe you could see that there's like an outline on the sticker where it used to say that, but you know, clearly it's not anymore. The new one still says LSD on it right there. Also the casting mark, I also noticed were different as well. This one says 2-2, this one says 1-2. I don't know if that means anything or not, but you know, those are the differences that I could find. Yeah, so as mentioned before, this one, you know, is clearly not an LSD anymore, as you can see. If I turn this flange here, they both seem to go the same way, but I could hold this, or I guess hold it, and still spin the flange, and it'll spin this axle stub here. Now, this one, it's a little bit more difficult to spin just because it's dry, but you can see that this one, the flange spins both axles in one direction, and even if I attempt to hold this down, it'll still want to go. So this one at least has some, you know, form of clutch left on its locking mechanism. This one either completely worn out or open to begin with, I don't know. But looking forward to putting this one in the car. And one more thing I'm gonna have to do here is you can see that this one has studs for its axles and also for the top mounting board locations, and this one is just empty all around. So I'm going to also transfer all these over as well. So if you aren't sure how to you know, transfer some of these if your diff also doesn't come with them, the concept is basically the same as a wheel stud. These are just splined nuts that you drive through the flange, just like wheel studs. So basically what I've done here is I threaded back one of the nuts from the axle, and I'm just gonna hit it with a hammer and drive it out that way. There's one. And you want to get a decent amount of thread engagement here. You don't want to go past where the thread is exposed, because then when you hammer on this, then you might damage the thread. But if you do it too little, then you might also damage the thread just because there's not enough of it holding it in place. So I'm going basically until it's flush, and then back it out like a turn, and then hit it with a hammer. BMW. Alright, so that's all 12. Alright, so now for the differential studs, kind of what I've done here is I've paint marked both sides of it just so I remember how far to drive it into the new one. I did check and confirm that where did it go? The lower bolts is the same thread, so worst case, if this doesn't work out, then I could just get 2 more of these, but having these would just make installation a little bit easier. So what I'm gonna try and do is I'm gonna thread this one all the way through, and I'm gonna thread the other nut and lock it on top of that and use a wrench to drive out the stud using this nut right here. So let's give it a shot. Alright, so for this one I thought I'd try and get you a better look at what's actually going on here. So I already pulled the first stud out by using the method that I just talked about. So I'll do this one again, but with a closer look. So now I'm gonna let go of the camera for a little bit because I'm going to take my 17 and lock this in place while I hit it with the impact. So now it looks like this. And what you're gonna do is take the 17 again and loosen this nut here, and that should drive this stud out. Now I needed a hammer to do this last time, so probably gonna be the case again. But I'll try and give you a better look at what's going on here. So so I felt the turn. Alright, so now you can see that right here. When I turn this wrench, you'll see the stud move with it. Should be enough. Alright, so now we're gonna be reinstalling the old studs into the new differential. So as I mentioned before, this is gonna be pretty much the same thing as installing a lug nut or a wheel stud. So what I'm gonna do is start one of these through, have a washer here. I'm gonna put over here on the top. And one of the old nuts. Hand tighten it. And then I'm gonna use the impact gun. And remember, this is a 14 to drive it the rest of the way through. And there's one. I'll do one more and I'll, show you a bit more up close what's happening here when I hit the impact gun. Use the impact gun on this. All right. Now watch the spline on the stud. Cool. And there's two. Alright, that's all of them. Alright, so the last thing to transfer over to the new diff here is the factory upper stud, or studs, yeah. So what we're gonna do is the same thing as we did last time to remove them. So we're gonna use a lock nut to install this back into place, but before we also do that, we're gonna apply Loctite here, so to help reduce this, or to reduce the chance of this backing back out. Alright, so one thing that I also just noticed is that one of these studs is longer than the other, and if I look at this, so the longer stud goes on the passenger side, so let's keep that in mind. So I'm gonna apply Loctite. I'm just using standard blue Loctite. I'm gonna use a lot of it though. And I'm just going to start these by hand and then just let it sit for a while before I try and drive in the nut. So they're going back in fairly easily, which is good, and they are gonna stop here. So actually this one seems to just keep on going, so what I'm actually gonna do is use red Loctite and then see over here where I left the paint mark from last time, and then I'm gonna use that as a reference to know when to stop threading it in. And as with red Loctite, you're gonna want to let it sit for probably at least a few hours before applying torque to it. Alright, so see the paint mark there, maybe? So I'm gonna now just let this sit and give it some time to cure before I reinstall this back into the car. And I'm actually gonna do the same with the other nut also. Other stud, I mean. Alright, so now it's ready for reassembly.